Nick felt a pang of guilt as Maggie's words hit him like a ton of bricks. He hadn't considered the full extent of the consequences when he went along with James's plan. He had been so focused on carrying out orders and protecting Orga that he hadn't stopped to think about how it would affect others, especially Maggie. He had ignored the fact that Orga hated it when Maggie was harmed. They were inseparable. That day when he called Frank to tell him about the plan, he wanted to let them know in advance that James was planning to use Maggie to make sure Frank separated from Orga. He wanted them to be prepared, but he restrained himself after hearing Frank say that he loved Orga. He chose not to tell him because he was jealous. It wasn't his intention not to protect Maggie. He wanted the news to come out to draw a line between Frank and Orga. Maggie, I'm sorry, Nick began, his voice heavy with remorse. I know I messed up, and I understand if you don't want to hear it, but please just give me a chance to explain. Maggie folded her arms across her chest, her expression softening slightly but still wary. Explain then, she said, her tone cautious. I didn't realize the impact it would have on you, Maggie, Nick said, his voice filled with genuine regret. I was so focused on protecting Orga that I didn't consider how it would affect your career, your life. I should have warned you. I should have told you what was happening, but I didn't. And I'm sorry. I hired people to put in some good comments, but it all went in vain. Can you forgive me and ask Orga to hear me out? Maggie listened quietly as Nick spoke, her expression softening further as his words sank in. When he finished, there was a moment of silence before she spoke. Nick, Maggie said, her voice gentle. And I understand that you were just doing what you thought was best. But that doesn't change the fact that you hurt me and put my career at risk. Do you know how hard it is for me now? It's going to take time for me to forgive you if I ever can. Before Nick could say a word, Orga appeared from the kitchen. To her, Nick was a bad person who used her to his advantage. He had completely lost trust in him. On seeing him, Orga's expression hardened, her eyes flashing with anger. What are you doing here, Nick? She demanded, her voice sharp with accusation. After everything that's happened, you have the nerve to show up at my doorstep? Get lost. I don't like dishonest people who only see others as pawns in their games. You're no different from James. Nick's heart sank further at Orga's harsh tone. He knew he had let her down, and now it seemed like repairing their relationship was going to be even harder than he thought. Orga, please, I am being honest, Nick began, his voice pleading. I know I messed up, but I didn't do it to hurt you. Orga crossed her arms over her chest, her expression unwavering. Honest, Nick? Do you dare even talk about honesty? Are you? She looked him in the eyes. Look, I don't want to hear your excuses. Nick, you betrayed my trust, and I can't just overlook that. You used me and Maggie as pawns in your little game, and now you expect us to forgive you? I'm sorry, but it doesn't work like that. Love, do you even know what that word means? Nick felt a pang of guilt and shame wash over him as Orga's words sank in. He had never wanted to hurt her, but that's exactly what he had done. He had let his jealousy cloud his judgment, and now he was paying double the price for it. I understand, Nick said quietly, his voice heavy with regret. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I hope that someday you can find it in your heart to forgive me. Orga didn't want more words from him. She was deceived once, and she didn't want to be broken again by trusting the wrong person. Her eyes still held a hint of mistrust. Leave, Nick. I don't want to get entangled with you. I don't want to be disappointed for the second time. Go back. With that, Orga closed the door, leaving Nick standing alone in the hallway, feeling more lost and ashamed than ever before. He knew he had a long road ahead of him if he ever hoped to earn back Orga's trust and forgiveness. But for now, all he could do was try to make things right, and hope that someday, somehow, he would be able to make amends for the pain he had caused. Orga looked at Maggie, her expression softening as she turned to her friend. Baby girl, I'm sorry you got dragged into this mess. I should have been more cautious. Maggie sighed, her anger dissipating as she looked back at Olga. It's not your fault, Olga. We were both blindsided by Nick and James. But we'll get through this together. Olga nodded, feeling grateful for Maggie's support. Yeah, we will. We always do. Now go freshen up. When I wrap up with the kitchen, I know you're tired. You went through a lot today. All right, let me go take a cold bath. My body needs to wake up. Everywhere hurts. Maggie sighed and stood up, groaning. Maggie headed off to freshen up, and Olga turned back to the kitchen, feeling a mix of emotions swirling inside her. She took out her phone and sent Frank a message. Hey, what's up? What have you got? She then put her phone down and continued cooking. As she stirred the pot on the stove, her phone buzzed with a reply from Frank. Hey, Olga, not much. Just finishing up work. We caught a big fish. It looks like Maggie will be saved just as I promised you. Going to meet the journalist and we'll tell you everything in the evening. How about you? Everything okay? Olga smiled at the message, feeling a sense of warmth throughout her whole body. At least Maggie will be saved. Tomorrow might be another story. She quickly typed out a response. Hey, Frank. Yeah, everything's okay. Just cooking dinner. Come over and join us and tell us. She will be happy to hear the news from you. She hit send and returned her attention to the simmering pot on the stove. She had new hope and gratitude for Frank's support. She felt a sense of relief knowing that Maggie's ordeal might soon come to an end. Moments later, Maggie emerged from the bathroom, looking slightly more refreshed. That feels so much better, she said with a relieved sigh. She then approached Olga and whispered, I was waiting for a long time to ask you, how do you feel about Frank? Well, if you ask me, I would say that he is in love with you. Have you noticed how he looked at you? I wish you could open your heart again, Olga. Not every man is like James. Besides, Frank loves your child so much and treats her like his own. Maggie was someone who always had a lot to talk about, and with her energy, she never complicated her life. She and Olga's happiness have always been her priority. Here's the revised version of your story chapter, with corrections for grammar, spelling, punctuation, conciseness, and fluency. Luke stepped out of his house. Since the caller ID was unknown, he thought it was Nick. However, when he reached outside, the person he saw wasn't him. It was Frank Miller himself, tall and exhibiting a demeanor that made others fear him at a glance. He was wearing a black jacket and trousers, black sneakers, and a cap that covered his face so that you wouldn't be able to identify him at a distance. When Luke looked at his hands, he sensed trouble. Frank was with two other men who looked hungry for blood. They were all wearing black leather gloves. Luke's heart raced as he realized he was in trouble. He took out his phone to send Nick a message, but the other man grabbed it from his hand before he could type a word and handed it to Frank. Frank's steely gaze bore into Luke's, sending shivers down his spine. Do you think you can cross me and get away with it? You're going to give me what I want or get what you deserve, Frank said, his voice as cold as ice. Luke's mind raced, trying to make sense of the situation. What are you looking for? He managed to stammer out. Frank's expression remained impassive, but his grip tightened on Luke's phone. He used Luke's finger to unlock the phone and check if there were any messages from Nick. Since this was Luke's personal phone, he didn't have another one to contact Nick with. When Frank checked the phone, he found nothing useful to him. Take him and make him talk. I have somewhere to go, he said to the two men without even looking at them. Luke's instincts screamed at him to run, but his legs felt like lead. He was trapped, at the mercy of Frank and his ominous companions. Frank's companions advanced towards Luke, and he felt a surge of panic. He had heard stories about Frank Miller and his ruthless tactics, but he never imagined he would find himself in the midst of one. The two men grabbed Luke roughly, their leather gloves creaking with each movement. Wait, please, Luke pleaded, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just an ordinary guy. But Frank's enigmatic demeanor didn't waver. Ordinary guys don't attract my attention, Luke, he said, his tone dripping with menace. You've got something I need, and I intend to get it one way or another. Luke's mind raced as he tried to think of a way out of the situation. He glanced around desperately, searching for any sign of help. But the street was empty, and the nearby houses seemed to loom over him like silent spectators to his plight. As Frank's men dragged Luke away, his thoughts turned to Nick. This was because of the news he had received from Nick about Frank being with Maggie. What had he gotten himself into? And more importantly, how was he going to get out of it? With each step, the grip of fear tightened around Luke's heart, leaving him feeling more alone and vulnerable than ever before. Luke remembered what Nick had told him. His words played in his mind like a death melody. You will take responsibility for everything, and the Hawkins Corporation will take care of your sick mother and your wife. If you dare betray us, you know more than anyone that we don't play games. Olga had asked Frank to join them for dinner. He couldn't disappoint her or miss the opportunity to be with Olga. That was the most important thing to him now. To Olga, Frank was a very good friend and someone she could rely on, but to others, Frank was ruthless and not someone to mess with. Olga was the only place where he could be himself. Not a minister, not a ruthless businessman, not someone high and mighty. Frank murmured to himself as he drove through the city streets. It looks like James has overestimated himself to think that he and his small company can mess with me. Let's wait and see what Luke gives me on him. He will soon realize that he had overestimated his power. I never forgive anyone who tries to act smart with me, not to mention whoever hurts the woman I love. The car sped through the city streets, weaving through traffic as Frank's mind raced with thoughts of retribution. Luke's fate hung in the balance, a pawn in a dangerous game that had escalated beyond his control. As Frank approached Olga's residence, his demeanor shifted subtly. The cold, calculating facade softened, replaced by a mask of familiarity and warmth reserved only for her. Olga greeted Frank with a smile as he entered, and he smiled back. She ushered him inside, her presence a soothing balm to his troubled mind. Kaya saw Frank coming. She missed him. She clung to him and said, "Hello, Uncle Frank. I was dying to see you." Frank kneeled down to her, ruffling her hair gently. "Hey there. First to you, I am not Uncle Frank. I am Daddy. Secondly, Kaya, I missed you too, even though we were together in the morning," he replied, his voice softer than usual, full of love and warmth. "Okay, Daddy. I missed you. My mom cooked delicious food and I made the juice. Do you want to try it?" We were about to start serving the food. Frank couldn't help but smile at Kaya's innocent enthusiasm. "Of course, sweetheart. I'd love to try your juice." "As for your mom's great meal, I trust her in the kitchen," he said, his tone genuine. Olga laughed and finally said, "Come on, guys. The food is getting cold. Let's go." As they made their way to the dining table, Olga and Frank shared a common understanding. Frank smiled silently, telling Olga that they would talk after dinner. Maggie joined the others at the table. "Hey, Frank. How are you?" "I am fine, Maggie. How are you dealing with the media and everything?" Frank asked. Maggie sighed a heavy and worried sigh. "I am covering myself in the duvet, not going out. It's good that no one knows where I live." Olga, who was done setting the table, cut the conversation short. "Okay, guys, enough with the conversation. Come. We will talk later." They sat down to eat. Frank savored the home-cooked meal, letting the flavors wash away the tension of the day. "Your cooking is quite good, Olga. You deserve an award." When they were done eating, Olga told Kaya to go and play in her room because the elders needed to talk. Olga's words marked the transition from familial warmth to a more serious atmosphere. With Kaya safely occupied in her room, Frank and Olga turned their attention to the matter at hand. Frank's expression grew solemn as he recounted the events of the day to Olga. omitting only the more dangerous details. So, he's now in our captivity. We will do our best to make sure he talks or gives us the evidence to clear Maggie's name. Olga's expression softened a little, but she still showed worry in her eyes. Are you sure he can betray James? Frank was confident. I told you not to worry. In the morning, there would be a new story on the internet. If he can't give me something on James, he will be forced to accept the mistake and apologize to the press and Maggie's fans, saying that he's the one who made up the rumors. And that would be a slap in James's face. He won't like what he sees. As for Nick, he was my friend. But since he's able to put my head in public for his boss, I don't owe him anything from now on. Maggie felt relieved to hear those words from Frank. Thank you, Frank. I can't thank you enough. I know it wasn't a big problem for you, but to me, it was a disaster. I wish you could date Olga, not those pretending things.